Welcome everyone. My name is Councillor Gavin Gamble and I am the Mayor at the Golden Plains Shire Council. Tonight, this council meeting is taking place in the Winton Shire office and is open to the public. This meeting is being live streamed in accordance with Council's governance rules, and I welcome any members of the public joining us in person or online. I have the discretion and authority to at any time direct the termination or interruption of the live streaming. Such direction will only be given in accordance with the governance rules. Should the live stream disconnect for technical reasons, as the meeting is open to the public in person, the meeting will continue as normal. The meeting is being recorded and every effort will be made to make the recording available on Council's website and YouTube channel. I will now recite the opening declaration on behalf of all councillors. We, the councillors of Golden Plains Shire, declare that we will undertake on every occasion to carry out our duties in the best interest of the community, and that our conduct shall maintain the standards of the Code of Good Governance, so that we may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in this council by the people of Golden Plains Shire. Now we move to the acknowledgement of country. Golden Plains Shire spans the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung and Eastern Maar people. We acknowledge them as the traditional owners and custodians. Council pays its respects to Wadawurrung elders, past, present and emerging. Council also respects Eastern Maar elders, past, present and emerging. Council extends that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Golden Plains Shire. Apologies and leave of absence. Are there any apologies for this meeting or requests for leave of absence? Okay. Confirmation of minutes. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us to confirm the minutes of the open part of the council meeting held last month on the 28th of June 2022 as circulated. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Kirby. And a seconder, please. Councillor Getson. Thank you. All those in favour? Motion is carried. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge and give special thanks to Deputy Mayor Helena Kirby for her excellent chairing of the June Council meeting in my absence. Thank you, Councillor Coe. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest?
Mr. Mayor, I'll declare a conflict in one of the confidential items in section 10.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bradford.
Item 10.2.
And this will need to be for a reason.
And the reason for the conflict is both a general and material conflict of interest in accordance with section 127 and 128 of the Code.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other conflicts of interest? Okay, we move on to our public question time. Public question time runs to 30 minutes prior to the consideration of the formal agenda by Council. We consider questions received with notice from the public. I will call each person who submitted a question with notice forward. Please come up to the chair and ask your question as it was submitted. I note that question time is not an opportunity to make general statements or enter into debate with Council or officers. Can I please ask if Judy Madden is here? Hello, Judy.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Now, I didn't bring the question with me because I thought you were going to read it there. But anyway, what it was is, would Council consider putting back the signs on the front of this building saying it's the Grenfell Shire Hall, And could we also get council to put a small sign putting up, just giving a bit of a history for this building, now that it is quite an important historic building in the area. And another thing which I didn't put in the question I raised, but also which Jill Wheeler, our president, who's from the Historical Society, Knight mentioned, it wouldn't be a bad idea just to put another little sign up saying what are the 3 groups that are using the hall, and just giving contact details of people who'd like to contact them who might want to be involved in either the Historical Society, the craft group, or the people running the pantry. So that was basically what I was asking tonight, even though I haven't expressed it exactly as the way it was written. So sorry for that.
Okay.
Is that all right, Mayor?
Yes, very good. Thank you, Ms. Madigan. And now, Director of Community Services, Mr. Sigona.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Judy, for the question, and I think we can answer all 3 parts of
Good.
the question. Sure. So, as you've alluded to, this building is currently we're about 3 months into our 12-month trial in terms of using the facility as somewhat of a community hub. With Linton Community Inc., the craft group and the Historical Society actively managing and activating separate areas of this building. Now that trial is progressing, our officers and our community facilities team will start some discussions shortly with those 3 groups directly, just with a view to getting some input around some updated signage, just to acknowledge their tenancy, perhaps their contact details and so forth, but we'll talk to those groups around that. More broadly, in relation to signage for this building and perhaps a sign that reflects a bit of the history, we'll take that on board, and what we'll do is we'll just reach out to the Linton and District Historical Society, which is appropriate given that they're now a tenant of the building, and you may like to do the same, but we'll do the same for now as well.
Thank you very much. I actually am a member of the committee of the Linton Historical Society, so it does fit in quite well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Now, can I please ask you, Chloe Benek is here? Well, as Ms. Benek is not with us tonight, a letter of response will be provided tomorrow. And can I please ask if Craig Walker is here? Hello and welcome, Craig.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors. My first question would be in relation to the use of the Crown land, which was the former goods area along the rail trail. We'd be looking at utilising that area if we could, gaining permission as part of the Progress Association, and we would manage that area to advertise some free camping to attract visitors into town to utilise various attractions around the area. So that would be my question as to whether we can utilise that area in the old goods yard, which is accessed off Brook Street.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Mr. Josipovic, Director of Infrastructure and Development, and the Director of Community Services, Mr. Sigona, would like to answer your question. Please.
I'll answer in the first instance, and Director Sigona can jump in if need be. Thank you for your question, Craig. The land is Crown land, as has been suggested, and forms part of the Skipper Ballarat Rail Trail. Interestingly, on the official government mapping data, it has Ballarat City Council and Golden Plain Shire Council listed as the community of management as it forms that rail trail. However, within our municipal district, we don't have to consult with Ballarat City Council. The land is township zone and is subject to land subject to inundation overlay as well as a significant landscape overlay, and that overlay is to do with the avenue of honour adjoining the site. So, in order to establish a camping ground, we have already related works. There will be a planning permit required, and we'll be happy to sit down and work through those processes with the Progress Association. I guess the other thing that I'll mention is not sure what amenities would be needed to support such a use, noting that the nearest public toilet is about 150 metres from the northern boundary and about 750 metres from the southern boundary, so it depends whether you need toilets, etc. So the costs associated with that would obviously need to be factored in. But I think in the initially we would suggest that the Inter-Progress Association provide a more detailed submission of the proposal so the council staff can work through and assist the association with regard to land management, planning and operational issues.
Okay, thank you, Director. Mr. Walker, you've got a second question, I believe.
Yes, I have. It's all about me tonight, isn't it? Second question would be the area opposite the takeaway, where the BMX, the bike track is currently, seems to be outdated. And is there any plans in the pipeline, or can we get something going to improve that area? And there's a couple of what they call pump tracks in Ballarat, which are highly utilised by young community. So, is there anything in the pipeline for that area?
Mr. Sigona.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the question, Craig. Well, I suppose to this point, in terms of facility delivery for perhaps younger people, that the focus has more been the new play space at the recreation reserve, and that's a little bit of a different cohort. And so we don't have specific plans just at the moment in relation to BMX or skate, but our identification and planning for those sorts of facilities is ongoing. So certainly happy to chat to you further around that. Council is currently progressing BMX and skate park projects at Meredith, Inverleigh and Bannockburn at the moment in various stages of planning, and we've got some pump track components to that, so we have some sort of insight into those sorts of concepts. So our rec team is more than happy to have a bit of a chat with the Progress Association to further develop your idea. I would just say where our community planning team is working with or seeking to work with community groups and volunteers to get the community planning program rolling again here in Linton, and so we'd encourage projects of this nature to find their way into the community plan for prioritisation also, just to give them some extra clout, I suppose, in terms of advocacy and so forth for future funding.
Okay, thank you. We now move on to consider the formal agenda. Item 7.1, business reports for decision, delegates report. Councillors, as this is our delegates report, I will ask for a mover and seconder of the recommendation, following which all councillors will be asked if they wish to speak to their attendances over the past month. The recommendation is the council receive and note the delegates report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Getson, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Whitfield. Councillor Getson, do you wish to speak to the delegates report?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a quiet month since our last meeting around the Shire. I've been able to attend the Bannockburn Oak Bowls upgrade opening, official opening of the Victoria Park netting project at the football ground of Bannockburn. I've also attended the Smythesdale Country Market, which was held indoors last Saturday. Before. And which was very well attended. I think there were some 40 stalls there, and we had Catherine King, Martha Harlett there, also representatives from the Louise Daly as well, and then we had performers come out from Ballarat. They danced on stage and sung, and we had live music and everything, so it was a really a warm day on a cold day outside. Lovely inside. That's all right. Thanks, man.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitfield.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Apart from what's in the report, I just had a late addition, which was that I chaired the Inverleigh Sporting Complex AGM, and all committee positions were filled for the coming year by a great group of dedicated volunteer members from the Bowls Club, Football Netball Club, Cricket Club, and Tennis Club. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the delegates report? Councillor Coe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, once again, we, as a group of councillors, attended the opening of the Bowls Club down in Bannockburn. It was great to see the money spent down there and the enthusiastic group of citizens who are using that facility and having lights installed as well. I think it's going to be it's going to help to achieve more than just playing bowls during the day, so they can have night competitions. And I think they also had barefoot bowls as well. So good on them for coming forward to council and advocating for an extra green. I'd also like to thank Christine Cousins, who was able to come along on the day and be the representative, as she was also there for the opening of the Victoria Parks, the safety net at the football oval as well. So we had a great day, and I think the other event that I attended was the Golden Plains Business Networking event that was held at Smilesdale. It was a great evening held by all that attended. There was probably at least 20 business owners from around the district, so we had people from Haddon, Smilesdale, Linton attend. With some of the new projects going ahead, for example, the new IGA that will be increasing the size. It was really good to hear about how they're going, what's working, what's not working, talking with other business owners around the room. So it was great that everyone was able to network and come together. So on that point, I'd also like to add that there is going to be another networking event in the north of the Shire, and it will be held on the 3rd of August at the Linton Hotel. So congratulations to them all for getting this set up, and it's good to see all these businesses. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've had a very quiet month for myself, and spent some great time with the family. But one thing that I just wanted to make mention of, and I just and it's one of our local residents down in Batesford, Christy Harris. She is currently in Birmingham in England representing the Commonwealth Games. She was made captain of the female boxing team, so huge honour for her. I'm not too sure if there's many other residents around the Shire, but it'd be quite interesting to see if we can follow some of the residents. But that's one that I've seen there, and all the very best to her in the coming weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have any other councillors who wish to speak? In that case, I've got a fair bit to say, so maybe I can use that bit of extra time. I'll start with talking about the things that are directly on that they're on my community engagement list, because I've got a fair bit. If I start on the National General Assembly items, which CEO Mr. Brassett mentioned last time, then I'll take up all my time. So 21, I'll just get through this quickly. I attended a board meeting with the restructure of the pillars was on the agenda. To the three main ones outlined in item 7.9 in this agenda, plus a separate First Nations pillar and the Managing Growth Advisory Group. With the Peri-Urban Group, last meeting was largely strategic in planning, the best way to be more effective with high-level lobbying and representation. Also of note is the voting in of a new chair for the group, which is Maura Berry, councillor at Moorabool Shire. With the Berrybank Wind Farm, now has a new community engagement officer, Philip Beattie, reported on stage 1 successfully operating and stage 2 getting very close to commissioning. Berrybank 1 is also a scholarship program at Federation University for renewable industry training. The Grampian Central Waste Resource and Recovery Forum is effectively wound up, and I'm not quite sure what's going to happen from there. But on that theme, I had an excellent and interesting tour of the Smilesdale landfill, which is just north of Smilesdale, but it's operated by the City of Ballarat. Other general highlights included NAIDOC Week with Bonnie Chu, quite an amazing person, an archaeologist and a bridge builder between cultures. And I attended her session at the Well in Smilesdale. Other highlights include Landcare Group, Billy T, cycling through the Brisbane Ranges after a coffee with the Mayor. Also the Queen Scout presentation, which was recorded in the Golden Plains Times as well. As an ex-Cubs leader, then I was very pleased to see that that's still going really well, and Scouts are getting a lot out of it. Generally, I've taken to putting a lot more accounts and photos on Facebook of community meetings and engagements, and places I've been, so I can refer people to that to catch up with everything that's going on. With the National General Assembly, the first day was taken up by the Regional Forum with about 350 other representatives from regional Australia. The first delegate I said hello to and started chatting to came from Katherine, Northern Territory. And there were representatives from Tasmania to Kilburra, Western Australia. One of the we also had councillors from local governments that were battling horrendous climate change impacts around Australia, including councillors from the Blue Mountains, their fires, multiple flooding of Lismore, a cyclone in Geraldton, Western Australia. The presenter in the last one from Western Australia, then he was really open about ignoring the rules and protocols of local government to some extent. And even with the way he was dealing with agencies and state government, so great was his passion for the people in devastated towns and the urgency to get things done. I thought he was an out there councillor, but it turned out he was the CEO, and he's quite open about ignoring tender processes, etc., which is quite, don't normally hear that. We won't get too many ideas there, we're not in that situation. The regional leadership was the later focus of a panel discussion with the Deputy Secretary for Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and the Arts. With the conference proper starting on Monday, we had a fabulous welcome to country from Auntie Violet, and there was like 1,000 people in the huge theaterette. Then that was followed by an address from the Governor-General of Australia, David Hurley, and then by the President of the Australian Local Government Association, the host of the event, Linda Scott, emphasising the conference or assembly theme of Partners in Progress. Catherine King gave her first major speech, but she'd just been diagnosed with COVID, so she couldn't be there in person. That was her first major elected, where she made significant commitments to the local government sector. The main MC or host for the rest of the event was the very warm but smart semi-comedian but strategic leadership expert, Alicia Mackay, who gave a great speech on thinking differently in perspective. She sees councillors as community housekeepers, the architects, the contractors, and the housekeeper. For most of the assembly, we're in a really big type of plush concert hall type of building. Other speakers included David Littleproud, Stan Grant, Zali Stegel, and the ambassador from the Ukraine. Of all these really impressive speakers, I was particularly impressed with Stan Grant, picture thinking about how we fit into the picture of global democracy and what he called the slow unravelling of democracy, symbolised with the rise of autocracies such as China, Putin, and supposed strongmen such as Donald Trump. He made the case for local government being the lifeblood of democracy. It's quite powerful how he pulled it all together and made me really think about it, and reason for all officers here too to be proud to be working in a sector that sometimes is very easy to pick on and pull down, but the fact that we're a government that's in direct contact with people, immediate contact, makes us different. Anyway, Stan Grant's speech made me feel proud that we councillors in the big picture are active participants in the most direct, democratic and connected form of government. For a lot of the council, a lot of that assembly, then we also made a lot of tighter connections with our local G21 neighbours in particular, Surf Coast Shire, also Hepburn, Collicotway Shire, Queenscliff, Corangamite, peri-urban groups, and Mr. Bradley's old council of Gannawarra. They obviously still have fond memories of him up there. I also spent time with 3 of the Ballarat councillors. So all in all, it was a really worthwhile trip, and even if I wasn't able to be there as mayor, I really do think it is worthwhile to get up to that National Assembly for the next one. Okay, thank you. So I take it there's no one else who wants to speak in the delegates report. So I'll ask the mover if they wish to close.
No, nothing further, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Now we move to item 7.2. The in-principle performance statement and in-principle financial statement delegation for the year ended 30th of June 2022. At this point, I'll ask the Director to briefly introduce the report, please. Mr. Rennie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an administrative recommendation allowed under Section 99 of the Local Government Act 2020 to allow an in-principle approval from Council as long as the Audit and Risk Committee endorse and the Victorian Auditor General's Office agree to sign off the financial statements and performance statements. Councillors will be kept up to date with the statements over the next few months within councillor briefings. There is also a rescheduling of the Audit and Risk Committee from September 13 to October 13, which has already been indicated as acceptable by the Audit and Risk Committee and acceptable by Vargo, with the annual report being brought to Council at the October scheduled Council meeting in line with the new Local Government Act 2020. There has been a slight amendment to the recommendation for clarity after discussion with Councillor Whitfield, which I will state. And the amended recommendation is to approve the annual financial statements and performance statement in principle in accordance with Section 99(2) of the Local Government Act upon the statements being endorsed by Council's Audit and Risk Committee, and then the rest of that of 1 has been deleted. Otherwise, the rest stands, and I present that to Council for recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Does any councillor wish to move the officer recommendation as written?
With the amendment to Mr. Mayor, as spoken with the deletion of the last part.
Yep.
As per has been circulated.
Yeah, all councillors have received the circulated amended version. Can I have a mover? Councillor Whitfield. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Thank you. Councillor Whitfield, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I move the amended officer recommendation, which has been distributed to councillors as the motion. As the Mayor and I are on the Audit and Risk Committee, it makes sense for us to be the delegates to take the in-principle reports to the Audit and Risk Committee. The process is an interesting one. Once two councillors sign the annual statements, they're available for audit, and then completed statements are sent to the Auditor General, followed by a review from the Audit and Risk Committee, at which the Audit and Risk Committee endorse the statements, and then they come back to Council at the October Council meeting for noting, which can then be added into the annual report. I believe the in-principle statements will reflect a solid financial position, and that Council has some good performance improvements in those reports as well. A greater discussion on those can occur when they come back to Council. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Nothing else to add there, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Okay, in that case, Councillor Whitfield, anything else you'd like to mention?
No, thanks.
I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Now we move to item 7.3. This is the adoption of the Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan. I'll ask Director of Community Services to briefly introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report presents Council's Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan for adoption. The Reflect RAP is Council's inaugural RAP and is the first of 4 phases under the nationally recognised Reconciliation Australia framework. And so in time, we would hope to move through the Innovate, Stretch and Elevate stages. Consistent with the Reflect phase of the RA framework, this RAP acknowledges that this is the beginning of the reconciliation journey for Golden Plains Shire. And as such, the document is really internally focused around building understanding and capacity within the organisation and further developing relationships with traditional owners before then committing to more specific external actions in future RAPs. Just before I finish, can I just mention one very minor edit in the document, and that's that on page 3 of the document, or page 5 of the attachment as it's presented to you, there's a figure of 204 people being noted as identifying as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders from among the Golden Plains community. I should just mention that that's a 2016 figure, and I thank Councillor Sharkey for reminding me that the 2020 has just been released, and so we will change that figure to read 376 people across Golden Plains who now identify as being of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent. And with that, the recommendation is that Council adopt the Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. Thank you, Mr. Sagona. Just a question regarding the Easter Mar people, and is there any indication in the future if they will actually be coming to Council and being in a partnership with us regarding any of their issues or anything to do with being part of the Golden Plains Shire?
Yes, we've reached out a number of times and we have had some limited engagement with them, and they've indicated that once they're a little bit more capable in terms of their own resourcing and so forth, they would like to engage further with Council, but they've acknowledged that they're not in a position to do so at the moment, but we will continue to pursue that relationship and try to build it and do more and more work with them over time.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, is there any indication of a time frame that we might be able to connect with them?
No, there's not.
There's not.
There's not.
Okay.
No, and it's really for them. I mean, we've sought to open that discussion, and they know that council is available and keen and ready to explore that relationship further. So as soon as they're ready and in a space where they're able and capable of doing that, we'll be there for the discussion.
Are there any further questions? Does any councillor wish to move the office recommendation as written? Councillor Whitfield. And can I have a second? Councillor Sharkey. Councillor Whitfield, you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I move that council adopt the Golden Plains Shire Council Reconciliation Action Plan. Adopting this plan is an important step in demonstrating we are serious about reconciliation and are supportive and respectful of Indigenous cultures, stories, its people and country. The Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan delivers on a commitment of the Council Plan 2021-2025 to promote and connect to our Indigenous heritage and strengthen relationships with traditional custodians of Golden Plains Shire. Development on an inaugural Reconciliation Action Plan under the Reconciliation Australia framework commenced with the formation of an internal council working group comprising of representatives from across the organisation in October 2020. A draft Reflect REP was prepared by the Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group and was endorsed at the March 2021 Council meeting for review and progression under the Reconciliation Australia accreditation process. Since that time, the Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan has included multiple revisions and submissions to ensure that consultation with staff across council and traditional owners has been culturally respectful and aligned with Reconciliation Australia's RFP requirements and processes. That adequate time has been given to ensure objectives and actions under the plan are meaningful, transparent and achievable, and that cultural safety and competency has been provided in the process. During the formation of this Council's Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group have continued to deliver a number of actions to progress reconciliation, including NAIDOC Week and Reconciliation Week activities, establishing strong relationships with traditional owner groups and working on partnerships, projects in partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander contractors and artists. Following Council's most recent submission, Reconciliation Australia provided notice of formal endorsement of the RAP under the framework in June 2022. The Reflect RAP outlines a number of actions targeting the 4 strategic areas of relationships, respect, opportunities and governance. Delivery of the plan will occur from now until December 2023 and will be supported through monitoring, reporting and ongoing engagement sessions with the traditional owner groups. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whitfield. Councillor Sharkey, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I think those words, relationships, respect and opportunities, continually repeat themselves through this, and they do mean an awful lot, and they're the pillars that essentially hold this reconciliation plan up, and this means a great deal to so many people in our community. We now join a network of more than 1,100 corporate, government and non-for-profit organisations that have made a formal commitment to reconciliation through this reconciliation program. The document is a fantastic document to read, and it's one that is probably one of the most visually appealing documents that I've ever seen in my time in council. It's wonderful artistry in there. It's a colourful document. It's very, very nice. The Chief Executive Officer of Reconciliation Australia, Karen Nunley, has some wonderful words in here, and I'm just going to read out a segment of what she says here, that the RAP program's strength is in its framework of relationships, respect and opportunities, allowing an organisation to strategically set its reconciliation commitments in line with its own business objectives for the most effective outcomes. These outcomes contribute towards the 5 dimensions of reconciliation, race relations, quality, equity, institutional integrity unity and historical acceptance. It is critical to not only uphold all 5 dimensions of reconciliation, but also increase awareness of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, histories, knowledge and leadership across all sectors of Australian society. This RAP enables Golden Plains Shire Council to deepen its understanding of its sphere of influence and the unique contribution that it can make to lead progress across these 5 dimensions. Getting these first steps right will ensure the sustainability of future RAPs and reconciliation initiatives and provide meaningful impact towards Australia's reconciliation journey. I think those words by Karen Mundine beautifully sum up what is trying to be achieved here and what we can do with this. I did note I had a conversation with them with regards to the that census data having just been released. And it's quite interesting that we've gone from 204 to 376 people that identify themselves as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. That's a 90% increase. Now, I don't know how those numbers come about. I don't assume that we've had that increase, but I think that's more people identifying themselves. My personal take on that is that there's more people that we're creating an inclusive community by such actions as this, and therefore more people are identifying themselves correctly there. And it's fantastic to see that number increasing and this document. So I couldn't be prouder of this document and the work that the staff and the organisation have done. This is led by the staff, but for all the staff members that have made the commitment to align themselves with this and make sure that this has been put in. I take my hats off to them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Whitfield, do you wish to add anything to close?
Firstly, well said to Councillor Sharkey. Really hit on the human element around this action plan or reflection plan. Yeah, no, it's a great step, great first step going forward. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Just before we move to item 7.4, I will note, I was actually on the Eastern Mail website today and noticed that they've got like 5 or 6 job positions available. So that's a great sign for the future for us as well. Yeah. Okay, item 7.4, please. Road safety projects endorsement. I'll ask Director Josipovic, Director of Infrastructure and Development, to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The Mayor, CEO, Director of Infrastructure Development and Major Asset Services hold regular meetings with the Department of Transport, Southern Grampians representatives to discuss road safety matters in Golden Plains. Issues include speed limit reviews, heavy vehicle management, pedestrian safety, road maintenance and road upgrades. It is considered, based on discussions with the Department of Transport, that advocating DOT for projects to address these issues is strengthened by a council resolution. This is the first report seeking council's endorsement for the Department of Transport project, but officers will continue to bring reports to council as required. Road safety matters are typically identified by council's asset services team or raised by community members either directly with council's Golden Plains Shire staff, Department of Transport or the estate people members. This report focuses on 2 areas of concern. One, speed limit reviews. The report includes an attachment showing previously approved or recently approved speed limit changes, as well as a schedule of proposed speed limit changes to be submitted to Department of Transport following endorsement by Council. The second issue covered by this report is pedestrian crossings, particularly through implementation of the Northern Streetscapes Framework, which identifies a number of crossings through Scarsdale, Linton and Smilesdale. And that has been backed up and supported through a community engagement process to develop that framework. The second crossing, or the second area for a crossing we propose to advocate for is on High Street in Bannockburn. There's been a number of requests by community members for a pedestrian crossing on High Street, particularly given the growth of Bannockburn and especially with the pending opening of the new supermarket. It is anticipated that foot traffic will increase significantly. And the third highlight that we've got in the report there is for a pedestrian crossing located opposite the general store and adjacent car park on the main road in Teesdale. As I said earlier, this isn't an exhaustive list, and we'll bring reports back to council as required as issues emerge. So the recommendation before you tonight is that council note endorse proposed road safety projects within Golden Plains Shire, requests the Director of Infrastructure Development to write to the Department of Transport and inform them of upcoming submissions for road safety improvements, and 3, officers continue to identify future road safety improvement projects for endorsement by council and to consider for funding in future budgets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director. I refer councillors to page 39 of the agenda for the officer recommendation. Are there any questions, councillors? Does any councillor wish to move the officer recommendation as written? Councillor Coe. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Getson. Councillor Kirby, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Campbell. This is something that is vitally important to the welfare of our shire and our residents, knowing that with a lot of our small townships, we do have crossings where people need to be able to access shops, post offices, infrastructure across the other side of the street a lot easier than what they have been. With the amount of trucks and cars that are on our roads at the moment, our residents are finding it very, very hard to cross the roads, especially during school hours. And this has led to even some petitions going around the Shire. As part of this plan coming back for us to go forward, we know that the Department of Transport really wants to see that we have involved the community in this consultation period. And we can honestly say that we have. We have heard for years now that a lot of these areas do want the speed limit slowed down. They do want to be able to access and cross the road safely. The school children need to be able to cross the road safely. It doesn't matter whether it's lunchtime on a Saturday or after school. So I think that by us listening to the community, going to the Department of Transport and putting forward what the recommendations that the officers are putting forward in this agenda, I feel that as a council, this is truly a way forward and one way that we can see some of these plans come into action. So, as the director said, we're looking at speed limits, we're looking at safety crossing the roads, and we're also looking at even ways that we can cross the road safely. So whether it's a zebra walk or something like that for the safety of our residents. So I definitely think this is a good move forward. We've consulted with the community. The community has come back and consulted with us. So at the end of the day, I'll like to move forward with this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Getson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to support the words of Councillor Coe. He's taken a lot I was going to say, but tonight was a classic example. Councillor Whitfield and myself left here to walk across to have a meal, and we got split by a car speeding over the hill with a trailer on the back. So there's a classic example of why we need speed restrictions. A couple of weeks ago, I was coming out from Ballarat and coming through Smilesdale and come right behind a 4-car pile-up. So we need to do that, and there's all elderly people have gone across at Smythesdale, the shopkeepers have to help them get across the main street there because the amount of traffic that is increased. With Linton, Scarsdale and Smythesdale in particular, we've got road trains now running through our town on the Glenelg Highway, which is very busy and getting busier. So our office, we've been our Northern Streetscape communication we had with locals. They requested that it was their preference that we had to reduce the speed limits for safety. Our officers have done a magnificent job working with DOT, Vic Pole, who are endorsing it. So we just got to look after our residents as safe as we can by reducing the speed limit and keeping children and elderly, all people on the shire safe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Coe.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Gamble. I will also support the directors or the council officers' endorsement. As was mentioned by the director, it was pleasing to see a significant number of local residents and community have feedback and take part in the consultation, especially in the identification of areas which we all, I think, believe need to be addressed, which is in particular that crossing the High Street and also the main road in Teesdale and the store and also the primary school. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other councillors who wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's good to see a number of safety issues have been identified by the community members and council staff that warrant a council endorsement request to be submitted to Department of Transport to address. That's all I'd like to say. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, any other councillors who wish to speak on the motion? In that case, Councillor Kirby, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. Yes, I'd just like to say that in the future, I think this is the way to go, that we have the community come to us with anything they regard as a safety issue. We can then bring it forward to council. The Mayor of the day can then speak to the Department of Transport and voice our concerns, and then we can come back to council for a resolution of council to go forward towards to the Department of Transport. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. I'm glad we didn't lose a couple of councillors tonight. Item 7.5. The Growing Suburbs Fund and Living Libraries Infrastructure Program 2022 to 2023 applications. I'll ask our Director Sagona to briefly introduce the report, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks council endorsement for funding applications which have recently been submitted under the state government's Growing Suburbs Fund and its Living Libraries Infrastructure Program. Councillors will recall being briefed at the June councillor briefing on these projects and funding submissions, but just the deadlines associated with council agenda production meant that we weren't able to present a report and receive formal endorsement for these applications before they were due at the beginning of July. Hence this request tonight for retrospective formal endorsement. So specifically, the recommendation is that council endorses 3 applications, they being the Growing Suburbs Fund application in relation to the Inverleigh Active Youth Space. This is for a grant of $1.48 million to a total $2.3 million project. The Growing Suburbs Fund application for the Bannockburn Skate Park Stage 2, which is essentially the bowl component of the park. This is for a grant of $805,000, which would in fact fund the entire stage of that project with no further contribution required from council. and the application under the Living Libraries Infrastructure Program for a mobile library van, seeking a grant of $111,000 for a $148,000 project or van fitted out with $37,000 from council.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Coe?
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. Thank you, Mr. Sagona. Just regarding the Bannockburn Bowls, Bannockburn Skate Park, not bowls, it's a skate park. I'm just wondering, we had 2 applications for up the south of the Shire. Was there paid for anything in the south, in the north of the Shire?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Kirby. We threw a few options and with the Growing Suburbs Fund, and we have a particularly good relationship and not a bad scrape with them and with Andrew Clegg, who managed that program for the state government. And essentially, we needed to progress with projects that were essentially ready to go in terms of some, concept plans where some engagement had been done, or whether they were a progression of an existing projects on the books, needed to be shovel ready to some extent. And following consultation with the Growing Suburbs Fund, they were really encouraging us to proceed with these 2 particular applications. So noting that we've, in the previous round, applied for and received money in relation to the Roadwood Hub, this time the decision was to go with the Bannockburn Skate Park and the Inverleigh Youth Space, collective youth space.
Thank you, Mr. Sagona.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? In that case, do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Whitfield? And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Kirby. Thank you. Councillor Whitfield, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll move to the recommendation as the motion. Look, what the Bannockburn Splash Park has done for families with young children, the Bannockburn Stage 2 skate park upgrade and the Inverleigh active youth space will do for mid to late teenagers. The skate bowl at Bannockburn will suit intermediate to advanced level activities and have supporting infrastructure such as lighting, shelters and barbecue. The Inverleigh Youth Space has been a community-driven project with outstanding support and collaboration between council officers and the Inverleigh Progress Association. The very young through to the late teens from all around the district will be attracted to what will become a destination facility. We know the importance of providing structure for active young minds, and these projects will literally provide the infrastructure to do just that. I would like to acknowledge councillors and the CEO for elevating these valuable community projects into the priority booklet and the subsequent lobbying through the federal election and now to the Growing Suburbs Fund. The application for the library van, if successful, will replace an older, larger vehicle that is nearing the end of its capabilities. A smaller van with wheelchair access and a modern fit out will be able to better service our communities. This van will provide a greater range of library-related resources. It's interesting to note that the return on investment, providing these applications are successful, is superb. Given council will contribute $187,000 across a return of 12.8 to 1. That's just fantastic. The Growing Suburbs funding announcements are expected September, October this year, and successful applications must begin within 18 months of that. And the applications being submitted have very strong cases and supportive documentation. Here's to successful outcomes for all 3. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby, do you wish to speak?
Thank you. Yes, look, we're very fortunate to have this funding opportunity through the peri-urban group of councils. As we know, we're on the outskirts of Melbourne, where the majority of these peri-urban centres are 150k. So we're just seeing an increase in the number of families who are moving to these destinations, and Golden Plains is very well placed. And as Councillor Whitfield said throughout his speech, I think the amount of money that's coming to our Shire is incredible, and for the ratio that we don't have to put in, 187,000 compared to 2.44 million, this is the second project now in the last 6 months that we can really take on board and be proud of as a council, that we've had shovel-ready projects ready to go, and that we're it's just a really good benefit for our communities when it comes to the dollar value. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to speak against this motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. These are three fantastic opportunities, and I think Councillor Kirby's question earlier there regarding, is there any other opportunities for the north of the Shire? And it's probably one of the this is quite an interesting recommendation. We're endorsing something that's already happened. So usually we'd see something, endorse it, and then the action would be taken by the office tomorrow. We're endorsing something that's already happened, which is, probably this process is quite challenging. I understand that the challenges presented by officers when they get presented with such, we can't argue with these opportunities here. They're absolutely fantastic, the contributions we're putting in, and if we are able to secure these, it's a fantastic result for our communities. I'm not too sure if there's a better way in which we can do these, whether we had a committee set up that something's endorsed by a committee of maybe 3 councillors, endorsed by that committee, and then something's brought to council and sort of been endorsed, and the officers have some confidence that what they're doing is the right thing. That age-old question, which we as all councillors are presented with and will be for forever and a day, is that north versus south, or those, why does one community get more than the others? When residents sit down and see these figures that's presented to us, we're largely guided by funding bodies. We have to move and adjust and be fluid to these organisations, federal, state and funding bodies. So sometimes it's an opportunity for Rokewood, like it was previously under the Growing Suburbs Fund. This time it's for Inverleigh. It's a fast-growing community, and it's going to be a huge benefit. And then the mobile library van is a fantastic opportunity to get ahead of ourselves there and get that van, which is going to be able to service a large percent of the Shire. But it's just an interesting process, and it's one that maybe it's something that will always put us into a challenging position in terms of that process. But at the end of the day, it always results in a great outcome for the community. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to, any councillor who'd like to speak on the motion? Councillor Whitfield, you wish to close?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's interesting. I always plan to close with this, and Councillor Kirby's touched on it, and so has Councillor Sharkey. I suppose I'll add to Councillor Sharkey's comments that any concerns about how projects are divvied up, we've currently got the community planning program being rolled out, which should alleviate some of those concerns, because those priorities will come up equally from around the Shire, from the communities, and get prioritised. And as Councillor Sharkey said, sometimes the funding organisation tells us which are the most appropriate projects. But it's infrastructure and services like these that Council is working to provide across all the Shire on a continuous basis. The Rokewood Community Hub was mentioned, and the Northern Streetscape upgrades are just a couple of other examples of significant infrastructure Council is working towards with the support of grant opportunities like these. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Now we move to item 7.6. Governance rules review. I'll ask Director Rennie to briefly introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, officers are recommending that we commence a community engagement with regard to the draft governance rules. Council is required to keep and adopt and enforce governance rules, and following amendments to the Act for rules for in attendance and delegated committee meetings by communication with officers have reviewed the rules to keep in line. There are a number of what officers consider minor changes and amendments, 25, which are listed for the public to see in this agenda, and councillors who were taken through this in briefing. So we're recommending that council endorse these to commence community engagement. So that still allows time for councillors and the public to with further feedback before and changes before considering for adoption at the August meeting in time for the September cut-off for the new governance rules. So we put that forward for recommendation to endorse and move out to community engagement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Does any councillor wish to move the officer recommendation as written on page 50 of the agenda? Councillor Whitfield, and you wish to second, Councillor? Councillor Whitfield, you wish to speak?
Yes, just briefly, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do move the recommendation as the motion. A review of the governance rules has been conducted and the draft is now ready to go out to the public. After consideration of public feedback, council can endorse the draft government rules at the August meeting. There are some legislative changes, some cosmetic and some additional explanatory notes. With these types of policies though, there is always room to call in for further reviews, seeing how they actually work in practice. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cunningham?
Nothing else to add there, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Coe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it'll be very interesting to see what comes back from the community. There's quite a few different changes in the way that council will be run in the future. For example, noting that instead of Mayor Gamble, it might be Mr. Gamble or Mrs. Whoever is in the chair. So just to note, to make note that these are some of the things that you can look for in this agenda item, and I look forward to seeing what comes back from the public. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Whitfield, do you wish to close?
Nothing further, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried unanimously. Item 7.7. Flag policy review. Items on page 130. I'll ask the director to briefly introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. This report relates to a cyclic review of council's flag policy, and consistent with the existing policy, the draft updated policy reaffirms council's decision of March of last year to fly the Australian flag, the Australian Aboriginal flag and the Torres Strait Islander flag at council's Bannockburn and Smythesdale offices. And this demonstrates recognition of First Nations peoples and reflects the principles underpinning council's reconciliation action plan, which was adopted earlier tonight. The updated draft policy includes some grammatical and administrative changes only and does not include any change to current practice. If adopted, as recommended, the next review of the policy would be due in December 2023, at which time a more comprehensive review of the policy is anticipated. But for now, the recommendation is that council adopt the reviewed flag policy as attached to the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? In that case, does any councillor wish to move the officer recommendation as written? Councillor Sharkey.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to put forward an alternative motion, which I have circulated to all councillors via email and in paper form here this evening. I've made one change to that this evening with one word there, and I'll read out that. So the motion I'm putting forward, Mr. Mayor, is that consideration of the flag policy is deferred pending a more comprehensive review and be brought back to council within 6 months.
Okay. Do we need a seconder for the alternate motion? So take it, you're the mover, Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And do we have a seconder for this alternate motion? Without a seconder, the motion lapses, the alternate motion lapses.
Ask you, Mr. Mayor, to second it for discussion.
Sorry?
Ask you, Mr. Mayor, to second it for discussion.
No, I think we'll just move on. If there's no other councillor wishing to second it, then you'd like to second it?
Second it for the purpose of discussion, thanks.
Okay. So, Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm taken back a little bit because it's this motion I'm putting forward there's no decisions here to be made. All I'm asking is that we give consideration to the flag policy and defer this decision and go through a more comprehensive review. And within the report, councillors, it mentions that a more comprehensive review is going to occur in 12 to 18 months. We're at the midpoint of our councillor term now, so I just don't know why we're going to defer this to the end of our councillor term. I'm suggesting that we commence that process now, and that more comprehensive report come back to us within 6 months, and whatever comes out of that can be discussed. We have not, as a council group, we have not had a discussion as a council group. We haven't had a discussion on this. It's just come to us. At our last briefing day, this was a start order, which means for the general public that it's taken as read and move on. We did unstart, and we had a very quick conversation regarding it. Several points were made there, and I don't think that we, as a council, can honestly say that we had a good discussion on it. There's lots of things there to be considered, and this motion isn't asking a decision be made. So, given our commitment to our 2040 vision, our councillor plan, and all our visions and values, we have a fantastic opportunity here to meet some of those obligations that ratepayers have bestowed upon us. At one of my first council meetings, one of the first things I did as a councillor in this council term is I asked for this flag policy to come, not to be reviewed. I made a change to that. We didn't need to go for community consultation. We didn't have to have a big, deep discussion about it. It was evident that at every council meeting, we should fly all flags which help create an inclusive community. We now fly those flags at both Smilesdale and Bannockburn, and because of that, I firmly believe, we'll go back to the rap from earlier, that those little things, flying a flag and letting those people in the community who may be of Indigenous, our Indigenous community, that's helping them to identify, as I said before, we've seen a 90% increase there. We haven't had a conversation as a council group around what else can we do? Is there other things that we can do? There's many other councils that use the flag policy to help create a more inclusive community, and I just don't know why we're not willing to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Councillor Whitfield, you wish to speak on the motion?
I suppose I'll just verbalise some questions that come to mind, and not necessarily asking anyone. I'm not sure if meeting procedure allows me to ask questions, but I did have in my own notes about the flag policy that it can contribute to the RAP that we talked about earlier. So I completely agree with Councillor Sharkey there. Yeah, I'm sort of curious as to what's missing from this flag policy that could improve it going forward within the 6 months that Councillor Sharkey's asking for. Yeah, there's a couple of questions around how it could be physically improved that are running around in my mind. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion, the alternate motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Coe.
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. Yes, I think Councillor Sharkey is right. We really need to look at, the flag policy regarding what flags we fly indoors, what flags we fly outdoors. As we can see, we don't have any flags flying outside of this building tonight. And we're in Linton. This is an historical building. It is still part of the Golden Plain. We own this building, and we should be looking at flying flags out there. And especially when we think that this also represents the school children of Linton, because they use the RSL monument out the front of this building, and so therefore, it should be part and parcel of having flags here. And not just at the Smilesdale Customer Centre or at the Civic Centre in Bannockburn. Other areas that we could think about too is, do we have these flags internally indoors at these centres as well? So it can be indoor flags and outdoor flags. So I think at the end of the day, when we look at the overall policies, I think it probably is worthwhile going back over them and making sure that we as a council have it, get it right. And as we know, sometimes there is issues on what flags do you fly on certain days. So it'd be really good to have that out in the open, and then for the residents to know as well on certain days when they need to, may it be Anzac Day, Remembrance Day, or just if someone in the community has passed away of recognition. So it'd be good to see. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Getson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to support Councillor Shark and Councillor Kirby's comments there as well. I fly the flag here for Anzac Day for the school children. It doesn't fly the other day, but I believe through Mr. Sagona, we're going to repair the flag pole at the front here. And as I've stated at the briefing, I'm quite happy to, I'll be tired, I'm quite happy to be the flag marshal or whatever, if that's the case. And I think we should review it and respect. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anyone, other councillors who'd like to speak on the motion? In that case, you wish to close, Councillor Shark.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll just close, and Councillor Whitfield's words there perfectly sum up sort of my as Councillor Whitfield said, he's got many questions, and so do I. And I don't think we've asked those questions, and I think that's pretty evident by the discussion that's just been had, that we haven't had that opportunity to ask those questions. There is the 79 different councils across Victoria, and they all do completely different things, and many of which I strongly agree with and strongly disagree with. I just believe that there is an opportunity there to help. And one conversation that I would quite happily bring up at a briefing day is, what about that fourth flag and flying something for NAIDOC Week, or for Pride Day, or for helping those minority communities out there, mental health. there's so many things that align. I mean, each month or every week we send out emails, and the footers there have different footers. There's so many things that other communities do. I know with the and it's about inclusion. It's just about helping that. It's only a small part of our community, and I know there's some councils that flew a Ukrainian flag for a couple of days, and that's showing solidarity towards a small part of the community. I'd like to see something like that happen. I would fully endorse, and I would love to see the Geelong Football Club flying if we won a premiership this year, for example, just for one day. Hopefully Geelong win the premiership. But there's many different places, and what I'm saying is there's lots of conversations to be had here. Let's not shy away from a conversation, which I don't believe we had, and then let's not put off to the end of our term something that's going to happen anyhow. Let's bring it forward and still within 6 months. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll put the motion to the vote now. So all those in favour of Councillor Sharkey's alternate motion? So motion is carried. And all those against? Okay, the motion is carried. And I'd like to apologise to Councillor Sharkey. I admit I misunderstood the intention of your alternative motion. So thank you, Councillor Whitfield, for supporting Councillor Sharkey. Item 7.8, Community Facilities Insurance Subsidy Policy Update. I'll ask Director Sigona to briefly introduce the report, which is on page 140.
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. This report relates to a cyclic review of Council's community facilities insurance subsidy policy. The purpose of which is to assist committees of management, so community-based committees of management, to fund the cost of buildings insurance and contents under their control. Under the existing policy, Council is responsible for insuring buildings under its own ownership, and it can then extend its coverage to cover the cost of committee of management, user groups, management entities, contents policies. Officers have conducted an internal review in conjunction with our governance team and determined that the current policy is still appropriate for its intended purpose. It ensures that council buildings are provided with adequate without placing additional burden and indeed assisting not-for-profit management entities and user groups with their insurance needs. So only some minor edits and formatting changes have been made to the previous version of the policy, but the draft updated policy does not include any change to current practice, and so the recommendation is that Council adopt the reviewed Community Facilities Insurance Subsidy Policy as attached to the agenda.
Are there any questions? Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Sigona. I'm just wondering, is there many community groups who have wanted to access this insurance subsidy scheme and have been rejected?
I don't know specific numbers. Where they would be rejected is if they wanted to insure an item, a contents item, that was not going to be covered under our existing policy. So if there was an item of such expense or the nature of the item was such that it didn't fall within Council's broad policy, that's when we would refuse that. And the other dynamic is if a group sought to use Council's policy to cover an item, if there was some sort of significant change to the premium, then we would consider passing on that cost. But normally, when we're talking, basic furniture, equipment, in club rooms and so forth, we tend to be able to cover that with minimal or no real impact upon council's premium. So I don't know of specific examples where a request has been rejected, but if you know of any, I'm happy to look into them.
So I'm just wondering if that would entail different size clubs. So, for example, equestrian clubs versus a club that might be indoors in a hall. Would that make a difference?
The policy can be applied to all committees who are managing a council-owned facility or building. The difference, though, or the point to consider is the nature of the contents. If that's going to push up council's premium, that's where the cost might be passed on to that group. So size in that respect doesn't matter, because the item, assuming the item will be covered in the first place, that's the first test. And then secondly, it's about whether the impact on the premium is such that warrants that cost to be passed on.
No, thank you, Mr. Coe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? In that case, is there a councillor who wishes to move the officer recommendation as written? Councillor Coe. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Thank you. Councillor Kirby, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, look, this is a very important piece of what we do as a council, and making sure that our committees are looked after, us as a group, as a council, making sure that all these groups can come together under one insurance benefit and get a reduction in their fees and charges. So going forward, I think it's the only way to go when we all connect and join up together and everyone benefits. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you. Councillor Cunningham, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, well, no, I support Councillor Kirby's words. Also, yeah, I understand there'll be some small community groups that, if they had to get their own insurance, wouldn't be able to afford it. Even though they rely heavily on being able to access this type of insurance through council. So happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Kirby, do you wish to close?
Thank you. Yes, I just think that if there's any other groups out there who are thinking that they might be able to put their hand up and access this insurance to help their community group or their facility, make sure you get in contact with the Shire and we can put you on the right track to help access the insurance benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unanimously. Now we move to item 7.9. Again, page 149. G21 pillar delegates. I'll now ask CEO Mr. Brazil to briefly introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, as the Mayor had previously mentioned, G21 has recently done a review of how it will liaise with its stakeholders and better advocate on behalf of the G21 region. As a result, a number of the pillars have been consolidated to allow for some efficiency and to streamline the advocacy process. What it does mean, however, is that council is now has now been asked by G21 to nominate delegates to the 4 pillars that are being established. And those pillars are the health and well-being pillar, the cultural and economic development pillar, the infrastructure, the sustainability pillar, and the managing growth advisory group pillar. This report puts forward councillors as those delegates, and once adopted, we would inform G21 of those delegates attending future pillar meetings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Sharkey. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Sharkey, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is it come out of a review process that G21 has gone through, and it's quite interesting. It's quite good. I'm quite excited to sort of see that change happen. I must admit, having stood on a couple of these pillars over years, they were largely not a great value of personal time to turn up to some of these in the past, where it was just massive room with a lot of people. So hopefully this streamlining, obviously these changes come about through conversations with people, and hopefully these offer some great opportunities for us as councillors, and engaging with relevant officers there, and hopefully we mix these up over the coming years with all the councillors and see better representation. And I suppose from a personal point, better investment of the councillors' time as we give up our work commitments to attend these meetings. So hopefully there's better level of meetings than there has been in the past. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
Mayor Gamble, no, nothing else to add there, thank you.
Do I have any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Coe.
Thank you. Yes, having sat through the review process, I think it's going to be an exciting time going forward for Golden Plains Shire. The thing is, though, we have to make sure that our back end to these meetings is putting our views forward. So we have to make sure that the work is done at the bottom, so that when we're going through to these pillar meetings, we're actually saying, or the councillor is knowing what to say, what we want in that area. And if they can have a really good relationship with the director, and there has to be a meeting bringing those two people together before they go on to these meetings, so that way they can collaborate together and have a better understanding and knowing and need of what we want in our shire. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves, and I look forward to the delegates and the directors working a lot more closely in these areas. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you any other councillors who wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Note there where we the appointed councillors, including myself, they all have portfolio duties, and each one gets on well with the directors, and I think the council will have a lot to gain from, and so will us new councillors that haven't been on before. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on the motion? In that case, Councillor Sharkey, do you wish to close?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. No, fantastic opportunity for us as a collective group, and it is fantastic to walk in a room with G21 partnering councils, and it's nice sometimes to take off your Golden Plains hat and walk into a room, put a G21 hat on, and look at things from a strategic point, and what is not just best for our shire, what's not best for our own community, but what's best for the broader region. And sometimes that might be in Geelong, Colac, or Queenscliff, or Bannockburn. So it's a fantastic opportunity to have a strategic look at our region. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carried unanimously. Now we move to item 7.10. See, awarding of tender RFT 07 2022 for the roadworks in the Merida Shelford Road, widening stages 4 and 5. Gender items on page 152, and I'll ask our Director for Infrastructure and Development, Phil Jasipovic, to briefly introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this project is to provide road widening, major culvert upgrade works and installation of guard fence along Meredith Shelford Road south of Meredith for approximately 4.65 kilometres. Excuse me. The works will increase safety for road users and reduce maintenance burden on council. The project concludes the final stages, 4 and 5, of a multi-stage project which commenced in 2002. The works are funded under the LRCI, which is the Local Roads Community Infrastructure Phase 3 program, with council being successful in obtaining $1.66 million. The tender was originally advertised on the 1st of May, closing on the 7th of June, and 3 submissions were received on closing. The submissions were reviewed and compliance checked, with no submissions identified as non-compliant. The panel members independently reviewed and scored each tender prior to consensus meeting held on 1st of July 2022. Burn Fleming was chosen as the preferred supplier based on consensus agreement and scores measured by capacity, capability, price and local content. An external property advisor from Fisher Partners attended the meeting as part of the approved property and tender plans for this procurement. Confidential tender evaluation panel report and property advisor report have previously been provided to councils. The recommendation is as outlined on page 152 of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director. Are there any questions? Councillor Rowe?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask the Director, is there any extension of time available over the 20 weeks if they don't get it done in time?
Yes, there is. There's provisions in the contract for weather, inclement weather, those sorts of delays that are out of the control of the contractor. But if the delays are contractor driven, then there's penalty rates that apply, which is not significant, but we can still claim.
So who's the arbitrator in this?
In the extension of time,
Yeah.
they apply, we review, and we will base it on Bureau of Meteorology data to confirm whether it's inclement weather or not.
Okay. Thank you, Director.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Rowe. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Getson. Councillor Rowe, you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is a great outcome to finalise the last stages, stage 4 and 5, of the widening, drainage and upgrade of this important asset in our shire, the Meredith Shelford Road. This road is extensively used by many Golden Plains Shire residents and visitors to the shire, including many businesses in the Meredith, Shelford, Teesdale and the Lethbridge intensive farming area, especially for them for getting their inputs into the area and their outputs out of the area. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Getson, do you wish to speak on the motion?
Just support Councillor Rowe's words there, and also that having these stages 4 and 5 completed will save the council a lot of maintenance in the future to come. So that's all I've got. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors who wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Rowe, do you wish to close?
No, I think I've said enough. Thank you. So, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's carried unanimously. We'll now move to notices of motion. Um, 8.1, significant landscape overlays. Mayor, councillors, as the next item is a notice of motion, which I have submitted, I will now vacate the chair for the duration of the item. Deputy Mayor Councillor Kirby, will you please assume temporary chair for this item?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Mouse too.
Thank you. We have now received, report be prepared for a future briefing to better understand where significant landscape overlays currently exist and where they may be best applied into the future. Mayor Gamble, will you move the motion?
Yes, thank you. The significant landscape overlays are important planning overlays. There's quite a few of
Point
them.
of order.
Sorry, yes, sorry. Mayor Gamble, you have 3 minutes to introduce the motion by indicating its intent or the desired, if the desired outcome is passed. Do I have a seconder? The motion, yes. Thank you, sorry, Mr. Yeah.
Okay. The main reasoning for this motion, I've put on the notice of motion itself. So I believe it hasn't been reviewed for quite a few years. And I recognise studies and work required by local governments, such as reviewing these significant landscape overlays, does cost money and resources, but I believe it's part of our remit and ambition that we protect. We're governing for future generations. Unfortunately, I believe our shire in the past has not done so to the best of its ability. At this point, I'll just emphasise that we need to protect, preserve, recognise the best and the special in our rapidly transforming shire. This is not anti-development, and I'll just quote from my reasoning for the proposed motion. This is an important area of strategic planning that hasn't been addressed for a considerable time, and given the significant and increasing planning and development pressures in parts of our shire, it is important to identify landscapes of significance in order to control the kind of development that may occur within these landscapes. Without appropriate overlay controls, some of the most special, iconic and significant landscapes in our shire may be vulnerable to degradation or irrevocably lost to future generations. These landscapes may be deemed significant for a combination of historic, aesthetic, environmental, scientific and social reasons. I commend this notice of motion to council.
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. Is there any questions, councillors? Councillor Sharkey?
Yeah, just on I thought I was on. I'm a little lost after some of those words. Just reading the motion, that a report be prepared for future briefing. I suppose my question is, who's going to conduct that? Who's going to put forward that? Who's going to do that report? When is it going to be done by? And also, it says there, and where they may best be applied. Who are they, and when? Who gets to determine the best? I'm just a little bit lost that the word review, a significant review was used during that, but I'm all for a briefing day and a briefing or report, but I'm a little bit confused now by some of those words that have been used. But I suppose my question is sort of who's going to do the report, when, and who gets to determine best be applied in the future? Who's going to determine the best?
Okay, the wording of this proposed motion was done in conjunction with officers, and it's been left in an open, a fairly open format in order to facilitate the best use of officer time, and also it will have to be investigated how extensive the timelines required, and the part where it says may best be applied in the future, it's a report to help us, to guide us as councillors, and to have a process where we can best understand and apply any overlay changes or recommendations in the future.
Thank you for your answer, Mayor Gamble. Is there any other questions? If there's no other questions, I will then ask for a seconder. Councillor Whitfield. Thank you. Okay, Mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
There's no one else wishes to speak on it?
I'll ask you first, and I'll ask the seconder.
Sorry, I thought that was
That's all right.
my introduction. I don't really have anything more further to add, other than directing councillors to the reasoning for the proposed motion, which is there on the page of the notice of motion. But I do know, and we are all aware that there is, I did mention that, that it may not have been done as well as possible in the past, or just time's moved on, and that's why we need to look at it again. But we have the precedent of the Bundles Lookout property and the views across the Maud Valley, which I believe, and so many others do too, should have been covered with a significant landscape overlay for a number of reasons, including for just economic and financial reasons as a major tourist asset, but to our shire, but also the cultural significance that landscape holds as well. That is just, and I myself recognise there are other landscapes in our shire that are well worth consideration of having a significant landscape overlay applied to them, and therefore I'm introducing this notice of motion to get a review and to have basically an update on what we regard as significant landscapes in the shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. Councillor Whitfield, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd to pick up on the wording there, Councillor Sharkey. Review is possibly slightly different to a report, but I think we understand the intent of the motion. Yeah, I'm quite supportive of having a report come to council. With ever expanding development, I think it's timely that such a report be developed. Just as it is important that heritage items such as dry stone walls and buildings be identified, so too areas of significant landscape should be identified and protected. Features such as the Inverleigh Escarpment, the Mirrabul Valley and native bushland, just to name a few, are too valuable to not investigate protection measures. This report would also satisfy the 2040 vision, where it states we need to ensure our environment is maintained with appropriate practices and stewardship of our natural assets for future generations. And we want to value and preserve our natural ecosystems, landscapes, features, open spaces, bushland and connection to cultural heritage. The Council Plan 2021 to 2025 includes actions under the sustainability pillar, such as valuing and protecting nature, cultural heritage and the environment, and preserving nature natural heritage for future generations. This report to a briefing would be the first step towards better protections for areas of landscape significance that are not currently covered. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whitfield. Are there any councillors who would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you very much, Councillor Curley. I'm probably happy. I'm happy to support. So I have where my mindset was coming into this discussion and where it's gone now. When we start using the word significant review, that's when we start using a significant amount of ratepayers' money. I'm happy for any council to bring forward and ask for a report, and we all at some stages ask for reports, so that they don't always have to come to an open debate to have. Happy to support this in the words that the motion is there, that a report be prepared for a future briefing. Hopefully that's in the near future, not 10 years' time, but to better understand where significant overlays they currently exist. That's fine. I'd like to see the word significant review be less used, and I also feel I probably don't agree with that with this action, which could have happened at any time over the last couple of years, is happening off the back of one application that got through VCAT on this matter. Let's not be specific to one resident or one applicant. I'm happy to look at this report as a global look or across the whole Shire. I'm just happy to support it. Would like to see the word significant review used less, and let's look at it holistically across the whole Shire, and not just one applicant to look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Is there any other councillor who'd like to speak for the motion? Any councillor who'd like to speak against the motion? If not, I'll ask Mayor Gamble to sum up, please. Thank you.
I see this as a staged process where I'm asking for a report to come back to us. It's obviously an issue that would have to be extensively investigated with a lot of recommendations and decision makings around it if it's to go further forward. I think the request that a report be prepared to guide us is quite reasonable, and it is not just about one place. It is a more general request to consider the many significant landscapes in our Shire that I believe aren't being protected enough for various reasons, including heritage, environmental, aesthetic, and social reasons, which I've mentioned there. But so I commend this notice of motion to council.
Thank you, Megan. Okay. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coe. Next, we had no petitions, no urgent business. And we have confidential reports for decision. There are confidential items for consideration tonight. These items are considered confidential as defined in section 3 of the Local Government Act. So can I have a move, councillor, to move the recommendation to move into closed session? Councillor Rowe, and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson.
No, not now.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously.
If you can just hold until we close the